is going on, everybody? Back again, rolling out Meet the Author. And you know, when I say Meet the Author, we have an amazing, special, talented author in the building. And today we have no other than Chris Palmer. He is the author of the book, The Fresh Prince Project. My guy, Chris, how are you doing today?
What's up, Malik, man? Thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Definitely, man. Thank you for coming on and having the time to speak with us about this book that you came out with, man. Look, I see you already got the hat to match the colors and everything. So we definitely. So, of course, we've all heard of, Fresh Prince. Of course, recently Bel-Air's dropped. But you have came out with this book, The Fresh Prince Project. For people that may not know what this book is about, let the people know.
Yeah, for real. It's about basically the complete and total history of the beloved 90s sitcom, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, starring Will Smith, Alfonso Ribeiro as Carlton, OG Aunt Viv, Uncle Phil, all our favorites. So it kind of goes into how the show was started, the social themes that it hits, and just its impact on Black America and its legacy. And also just the fact it's a super fun sitcom that everybody seems to love. But it's just kind of an entire sort of deep dive look at really every aspect of this beloved sitcom.
What inspired you? Why did you want to create this book?
I mean, I love reading pretty much anything related to pop culture, whether it's music, movies, TV, fashion, and all this different stuff, especially if it has a nostalgic sort of edge to it. And so I read a lot of books, and I was thinking, I'd like to read a book on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So I started looking for it, and I realized that one didn't exist, so I wrote it.
So what are some things that people can look forward to, reading this book? I mean, of course, just looking at it from behind the TV, everybody just wants a good laugh, but I'm sure you have, like you said, some in-depth things, maybe some things that some people probably don't even know about. But what are some things that we should be looking out for?
So in the book, you're going to get the origin story of not just every character, but every actor, because there were all these actors that nobody had known. Some people knew about Alfonso Ribeiro, but everyone else in the book, nobody really knew about. So I just traced all of their stories from the beginning, how they got into acting, where they're from, how they got the show, the auditions, everything. So you're going to learn everything about every single character. I do the same for the writers and the directors. And also one thing I do is I look at some of the more popular episodes, the fatherhood episode, episodes which touch on Blackness and policing and driving while Black and stuff like that. And I go into why those writers wrote those episodes and the stories behind it, because every episode has a story. I mean, when you watch a show, it just seems like a funny sitcom. But in reality, everything is done for a reason. And just so all the personalities behind the scenes, I try to bring that up front. So you're going to, trust me, when you read this book, you're going to see the show differently.
Were you able to get in touch with any of the actors, directors, producers of the show, and get their take, or was this kind of just like something like you doing research and boom, you just made it happen?
Well, there was about a year's worth of research, but doing a book like this, sports is my background. So doing a book like this was a new lane for me. So I had to basically cold call, cold email everybody who was involved with the show, a show that was on 30 years ago. I talked to dozens of writers and directors. I talked to a lot of the actors. Wasn't able to talk to Will Smith, but I talked to all kinds of people, producers, showrunners, Andy and Susan Borowitz, talked to them extensively. So there's a lot of voices of people who were involved in the creation and the production of the show.
And is this your first book, or you've written many books before?
This is actually my seventh book.
So what makes this book different from the other six?
Well, most of them are, my first ones are about sports, and some of them are collaborations with other athletes. Lamar Odom, I did a book with LL Cool J, a bunch of different things. The thing that makes this book different is the reporting. It's a deep dive. It's deeper than any book I've ever done. It goes far beneath the surface, down to the core of the earth. I mean, I really go deep with this. So I think that's the thing that makes it mostly different.
As journalists, we always, are writing. If we're writing a feature or anything, it's not going to be a book long, but it's going to be a long thing. It's going to be long. But for you, and of course, I mean, you're a journalist as well. I would definitely consider you a journalist. You know, what made this, you know, writing a 200 plus page book different than just writing a little, you know, maybe 1,000 word feature on somebody?
Yeah, I mean, when you do a 1,000 word feature, you're talking about, even if it's just 1,000 words, that takes a lot of effort. You got to talk to a lot of people. You got to think it through. You got to structure it properly like you want to, because you're still telling a story. So that takes quite a bit of effort. You got to be thorough with it. It's going to be edited and rewritten. So basically, take a 320-page book and times it by like 100. And a 1,000 word feature will take you a few days, and a book like this takes years. It took me 3 years to research, write, interview, then you go through the copy editing, and you go through all the different processes. So it's like a massive, like, okay, so basically, if you're writing a feature, it's like climbing a hill. You're writing a book, it's like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Makes perfect sense. So,
It's cold and lonely up there, man.
right. so so for me personally, I'm Gen Z. I did watch the Fresh Prince. Of course, you know, still wasn't out when I was born and everything,
Yeah,
but
of course.
still watching the shows and everything. But of course, you know, my generation, we kind of are going to lean towards Bel Air. You know, the fresh, clean, you know, everything just new. Uh what differences have you seen between the Fresh Prince and the Bel Air? And you know, were you able to capture some of that stuff in the Fresh Prince project?
Well, obviously, the difference between one's a comedy and one is a drama. And so, like you said, the new version is very fresh and very clean, where the older version is a very broad, a comedy with a lot of, you know, the humor in the first one was fat jokes and bald jokes and short jokes and you're not black enough type jokes. And so the new one is a bit more serious. The characters have kind of agendas throughout the series in a way that they didn't have so much in the broad comedy, and you were meant to laugh when you watched the original one. Now you're meant to be involved and feel what the character's going through. And just look at the Carlton character from the original to now. It's a very different character. I really like what they did with the new one. He's a bit more driven. He's a bit, I don't want to say sinister, but he's not like the original Carlton, who was like very sure of himself, and he was the sort of comic relief of the original show. There's definitely a different take.
While writing this book, what were some of the things that were there some things that you probably were shocked about or didn't know about until, you know, you did your research and finished the book? It was like, wow, I never knew that.
Well, I would say the main thing as far as that goes was how a show is put together in terms of how it works in the writers' room. See, at the time, they had about 18 to 20, 22 writers, and they have pitch meetings. Like if you work for a magazine or a website, you guys have meetings, everybody pitches stuff. It's kind of the same thing. And somebody will pitch an idea for a show, whether it's based on a moment from their life or just a funny premise they had. And depending on how many laughs it gets in a room, it starts to develop interest. So a writer would then take that story to his editor, develop it more, take it to the showrunner. He would approve, he would come back, and then he would start to write the show. So just a process of how it works in the writer's room, how it goes from an idea to, and there's like battles and there's fights and there's all different personalities. So that was the thing that I really learned about what goes on behind the scenes of a show. Because when you tune into a show, you just see the show. That's it. You don't know the process that it takes, and it was very educational on that type of level.
Well, right after finishing this book, was there any other sitcom that you wanted, that you were like, man, I really want to do I want to do a book about this too? Was it any sitcom?
Man, that's funny because probably there have already been books done about the sitcoms that I would want to do. I mean, there's so many books on The Simpsons. Just you know, there's a great book on Seinfeld. All these other different books. Um, I'd love to read a book about Good Times, the old school comedy. That's way before your era, my man. But I would still love to read how that shaped it. And I do really go back into the history of the Black sitcom leading up to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That's the one thing. There's a history lesson right in the middle of the book. So, but I'd like to read a deep dive on it because it was a compelling show. It was just and it was a very groundbreaking show as well.
Definitely, wrapping up, Chris, I want to ask you, for somebody reading this book, what's the one thing you want them to take away from after reading a book like this?
Man, I think it would be just how this show broke ground, because this was the first show on network primetime television that was a sitcom that had a hip hop vibe. Okay, you see all these shows today, including Bel-Air today, that has sort of a hip hop edge to it, but that did not exist before the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It just wasn't a thing. You had the Cosby Show, that was definitely not hip hop. You had Different Strokes. You had all these other shows. I'm sure you're familiar with Family Matters, kind of ran at the same time. Not a hip hop show. But this show, because Will Smith was the main character, he was one of the first people who was a rapper, came to be an actor. So this had a hip hop vibe to it, which is why the show is so important. And it became natural for shows and movies and TVs to incorporate hip hop after that. So I think that's one thing that people can take away.
Definitely. Well, Chris, I want to thank you again for coming on and speaking with us about the Fresh Prince Project. I hope everybody checks this book out. We want to get a deep dive into the production, the characters, everything that went behind creating this amazing, funny, hilarious sitcom. Before you go, Chris, let the people know where they can find you if you have social media, if you have anything coming up. This is your time to let the people know about you.
I mean, most people know me from my NBA Twitter feed. That's Chris Palmer, NBA. And you can get this book at Barnes & Noble. You can get it Simon & Schuster. You can get it pretty much anywhere they sell books. And just hit me up. Love to talk basketball. Love to talk Fresh Prince. And Malik, thank you, man, for having me on. Big shout out to Rolling Out.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for checking us out. This is Rolling Out. Meet the author, your host, Malik Brown, special guest, Chris Palmer, and we are out.